for this edition of our little corner. We're at 6 Lincoln Lane in Plattsburgh at the home of Walter and Betty LaPlant. How are you folks?
Good.
Thanks so much for inviting us into your home in Plattsburgh. There's no, as far as I know, there was never a one-room schoolhouse on Lincoln Lane in Plattsburgh. But an awful lot of nice people live here, and this is just a hoop and a holler from one of the first places I lived when I moved to Plattsburgh in the early 1960s. In 1966, I believe I was kicked out of Blake's trailer park. Old Roy Blake would remember that, as I told you, because he was a friend of yours. Yeah, for hanging my wash up on Sunday. That was one of the rules, and I didn't realize it. But, well, you know, if you saw my undershorts hanging on a line any day of the week, it would be enough to horrify the neighbors. So anyway, I moved out of there and moved into a place called what's the name of the street out here?
Adirondack Lane.
Yeah, Adirondack Lane, and Baker's Trailer Park was down there. 1966, and the rest, as they say, is history. So, but you guys didn't live here until the last 3 years, right?
3. It'll be 3 in July.
Well, we're going to talk a lot about one-room schoolhouses today, and when you get to meet these people and listen to all these wonderful stories, you're going to learn so much stuff. You better get a pencil and pad right now, because you're going to need to take notes.
I got a picture of that one room.
Oh, I know you got it. We're going to see that picture in a few minutes. It started with, who walked in when we were doing Pioneer Days?
Gerald Mayo.
Gerald Mayo, and said he went to a one-room schoolhouse. The first half hour of our show was about his one-room schoolhouse. We asked for a picture of it, and you said he found one, right?
Yeah.
After that?
Yeah, Mrs. Eddie, who lives a few doors away from him and right around the corners, had a picture, and he's now got proud possession of that picture because he lived in that house, and then later on tore it down and built his home at that site. So
Isn't that wonderful? But he has a book, right?
he has the attendance book from that school also in the 1920s, and it shows where the teacher was paid $6 per pay period, and
Well, we learned later that connected with this school, somebody made $6 a week, and it cost $1 for room and board. I think. Was your mother?
Yeah.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Well, this see, things mushroom. I did a series of programs on one-room schoolhouses on the radio back in the 1970s, and everybody's got some connection with a one-room schoolhouse because every neighborhood had one back in the olden days before the days of centralization.
I went
And-
to one, and it's still standing. It's a house now.
See that one?
Somebody's living in.
And as you're going to learn, this one that we're going to talk about today was moved down to where? Plattsburgh Rod and Gun Club?
Yep.
Now, I haven't been down there in years. It could still be there. Oh, boy. Well, on and on. Fast forward back to a few weeks ago when Sue Botsford called me up from the press and said, there's a man over here I think you'd like to meet. So I ran over there, and it was Roger Blake. And he had this little book, and this little book contains the minutes of the District 8 schoolhouse. So I want you to see inside the front covers with all the ciphering, as they said. Everybody wrote figures down. Now, it says property of Fred Blake, West Jay-Z, New York, and that was the Fred Blake who actually wrote in this book. He was the last secretary in the early 1900s, or whenever it was, and now it's the property of Roger Blake of West Jay-Z. And he said, would you like to look at it? And I looked at it, and the first date I saw, let me turn a couple of pages, was 1835. Now, in Europe, they have history that goes back hundreds and thousands of years. In the United States, we only got a few hundred years. So when you're touching books that date back to 1835, this book is like a time machine. And I wrote a newspaper column about it because it's just so absolutely fascinating to see that each student had to bring in a quarter of a cord or a half a cord of wood every year, and how much it cost for a stovepipe, and how much it cost to build this 18 by 22 foot building in the beginning, and it's just a riot. But throughout the pages of this little book, mostly what they're talking about is getting enough wood for the winter, and about going to school in 2-3 month sessions, I think. And then these people got in touch with me and said, we know a little bit about that schoolhouse because Walter went there. Now, Walter without giving, well, I guess we can give away your age. We don't care. We're proud to be alive at our age. But what years did you go to school there? What'd you guess?
I went through the eight grades there when I started.
You were
I'm
born
third.
in
I'm
26.
75.
You were born in 26.
Oh,
So,
so you started
I'm
right
30.
out there in first grade,
31, 32, 32
1931,
maybe.
32. Went there through the grades.
Yeah. Then went to high school in Plattsburgh.
Oh, boy. Now, you weren't the only person in your family to have a contact with this school.
Oh, my father's family all went there too.
Isn't that amazing? Now,
They taught. Some of them taught there.
now who taught there?
Garfield, Nina.
your mother did, but she wasn't a LaPlant at the time.
Oh, that doesn't matter. She's. I guess we can count your mother as family, Walter, if your wife doesn't mind here. No, yeah, and Garfield, and you
Yeah.
got a picture of him, right,
Yeah.
Betty?
Yes.
Well, we don't have to have it right now. We're just setting the scene of what we're going to be doing today. So he has a tremendous connection with this schoolhouse. And it was eventually moved. You don't know when it closed, but you guessed it was the 50s. It's somewhere in one of the books.
It's in one of those.
I should have known. This girl is a history freak. And when you see how carefully she's got everything annotated in these books, in the day, this was all done without the help of computers, mind you, right?
Oh, yeah.
You gotta, when
I'm
you
not
did,
into computers.
when you did genealogy in the old days, you had to do the legwork. You had to visit the cemeteries. You had to talk to the
Yeah.
people. You had to go to the school.
And Addie Shields was a great help to
And
me.
our friend, dear friend, Addie Shields. We've spent a few hours interviewing Addie Shields, and she's taken us up to Chambly, Quebec, right to the fort, and we've traipsed all over the country with Addie. What I love about Addie is she'll stand on a hill and picture what it was like 150 years ago, and she'll draw that picture, and you'll be mesmerized. You'll just go right into it. We're going to have a lot of fun in this house today at 6 Lincoln Lane in Plattsburgh because a lot of the things were transposed from the LaPlant Road, Beekmantown, West Shazy, right? Two towns are represented up there. It's now the home of the Twin L's campsite, named after twin sisters, as we as we learned. And we're going to learn a little more about the history of that school, but about what life was like in our great North Country a long, long time ago. So don't you dare go away. While we're on the subject of the old number 8 schoolhouse in Beekmantown, this young lady just flipped a few pages and found a picture of it. And I don't have any idea when that picture was taken, do you? Betty,
Yeah.
what would you guess?
This is Walter here, this,
Oh, he's the
The
like
little
the
fellow
third
right
one from the
here.
right, the little short guy near the right-hand
Yeah.
side. I see two girls, right? One in the front, one in the back, and then Walter,
I see probably 34.
1934, huh? Now you did. How did you gather all this history? Did you just talk to people and write it down in
Mhm.
longhand and then
And-
type it up?
like the families. I sent them a sheet to fill out as far as their children, when they were born, who they married, and so on. He said,
Oh.
Walter said, you probably won't have anybody speaking to you by the time you get done.
You know,
But
it's,
they all cooperated, I will say that.
talk about a legacy. When
Yeah.
you're dead and gone 30 or 40 years from now, people will be looking at these books and saying, wow, Geraldine Jeanette, Bessie Comstock, Marjorie LaPlant. What relation was Marjorie?
Sister.
Your sister.
Two sisters. I have two sisters.
And Nina or Nina?
Nina.
LaPlant, Dora Comstock, and then in the front row, Luella Jeanette, Juanita Jeanette. There he is, the big guy, Walter LaPlant Jr. and Dwayne Trainer?
No.
Trainer. My goodness. The old schoolhouses were just pretty fantastic. And if you read the minutes of that book, you'll see when they put the first roof on. You'll find out there's a place where it spent so much to plaster and lath the walls, first from the windows up and then from the windows down. And when they put a new floor on, and it's great to just go back because in opening those pages, you're back in 1848.
Blackboards. It's something about the blackboards. When they put
Blackboards were in there. And was there a pump outside, Walter?
No, no, we went to Blake's farm to get our water
Oh, you
from the
did?
spring.
Well, you see, for those people who read my newspaper column in the Press Republican in the Spectrum section every Sunday, I used a few highlights from the book, so you'll know that the Blakes owned that property, right?
Yeah.
At one time, and
Cudworth, I guess it was.
Cudworth, Blake's family, and for somehow they extracted that little piece of land that the school was on, so they gave that to the school district. But then later, it came up for auction, and the Blakes bought it back to add it to part of their farm.
Yeah.
And for the benefit of our viewers who may never have been down the LaPlant Road, it's off the Military Turnpike, heading toward Ellenburg, not too far down the road. As you're heading toward Ellenburg, you take a right-hand turn onto the LaPlant Road. And how long is that road, Walter?
About 2 miles.
It's only 2 miles? Gee, on a bicycle, it seems like 4 or 5. But I've been down that road many times. The first time I really paid attention to it was when our family camped down there at the Twin Ells campsite. And, you know, as part of the history that Mr. Blake told me, Roger Blake told me, the property was eventually sold to 2 out-of-town guys who married twin sisters here, and their names started with L, right? The gentleman. So they called it Twin Ells Campsite, and it's a fairly popular campsite. And for those of you, if you want another connection, you might remember Barry Brannan, one of the most famous North Country coaches, who had a nice maple sugar grove right across there on the other side of the road. And my nephew, Bobby Frenier, and his wife Michelle and their family on that area. And now I understand, I haven't been down the road in a while, but I understand there's a whole, like a trailer, house trailers, right? Living trailers on the other side of the road, maybe right up to near where that
Yeah.
schoolhouse was located. Now,
Where's the road end on the east side though?
where does it end on the other end?
O'Neill.
O'Neill Road.
O'Neill.
At the O'Neill Road.
Yeah.
Okay, we got you. Now, you folks, you were brought up there. You weren't. Where were you
No,
from?
I
then?
came from Moores up on the North Star Road.
Oh,
As
way,
close to
way
Canada as I
Almost
could
a
get.
Canadian.
Right on the border.
Not-
And how did?
Maiden name?
What was your maiden name?
It was Coakley, Cokley.
Oh, now you told me that story. What was the change?
The
in
original, in doing some research, my great-grandmother's buried in the cemetery in Morse Forks, and she spelled her name C-L-O-C-L-O-U-G-H. I can't remember now, but it isn't anything like the way we spelled it. I don't know what the change was, or
Well, look at Castine and Castini and whatever else they did with poor Calvin's name. And Rabideau,
Yeah.
you know, Clyde
I
Rabideau.
think it was Addie that told me that sometimes the kids couldn't write their names, and the teachers would put down what they heard.
That
And
was
that's-
part of it. And
that
don't
was how
forget
they-
the French priests were not too swift on the English names, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of things. And people would write their names phonetically because people, you know, the poor farmers back in those days didn't go to school too often, and they could write an X, and the priest would hear what they said.
Mm-hmm.
That's true of many immigrants, right, down in Ellis Island.
Yeah, and just recently I was going over the, just as an example, 1790 is of course a long time away from when she was in school, but in 1790 as an example, Alberg and Islamont were considered by New York State to be part of New York State, and they were also considered by the Republic of Vermont to be in Vermont. So the census was taken by both parties, and I would say about 50% of the spellings of the names are entirely, are different. So if you're a Vermonter looking at your name, you'd say my ancestor's name was such and such. If you're from the New York side, you said my ancestor's name was different.
I went over
And
to
different if you were in Quebec, too. You
I went
over?
over to the Mormon library over here to trace my great-grandmother's name, and she also traced the Coakley name, and she found Beecham Coakley. That was my great-grandfather. That was born in Scotland 100 years before my great-grandfather. Same exact name, spelling, and everything.
Isn't that? Boy, that's pretty
And
neat.
she tried to trace it down through, but she couldn't as to who they married and the children
It's
were.
very difficult sometimes to fill in every piece of the genealogy, but here's a gal who's done it for how many genealogies have you done in your lifetime?
Well, I'll tell you why I happened to do these.
Just happen to have
My
a,
husband, I worked from a normal day, 8 to 5 usually. And he worked at the Beatontown School from 2:30 to 10:30. So the only thing I had at home to entertain me was the dog, and she'd sleep most of the evening. So I said to myself, I think I'm going to do some family histories. So I wrote to the different cousins, I guess it was, I contacted. And that was in
1982.
Mm-hmm.
20 years ago now.
And everybody was very cooperative, and a lot of these pictures are Xerox copies, but they let me take the picture and copy them so that I could use them. I have a few of the pictures, but
So now, did you make copies of these books for other people? Or did you,
Yes.
you did?
Addie saw to it that I got copies made.
Addie wants a copy of everything. Now, I got to
Yeah,
mention a humorous aside. Your mother's maiden name was Moocock.
My
Grandmother's?
great-grandmother.
Great-grandmother's maiden name, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you said, boy, you didn't know if there was any other Moocock left in the world anywhere. So I jumped on my trusty computer, and the only reference I could find to that name, well, actually, in this part of the country, the only reference was to your great-grandmother, who was buried in the Union Cemetery in Moores. There's the name, one name. Then all of a sudden, up on my screen pops a picture of a cow with a rooster on its back. And underneath it said Moocock. Somebody had chosen that as a symbol for something.
Yeah.
And there were a couple of Moocock names mentioned way back in history somewhere. But that's like my mother's maiden name of Requa. There just aren't too many left on the face of the earth.
Right.
But you do run into a lot of fascinating stuff when you
Oh,
start
yes,
to...
I guess I enjoyed it, doing it. I think I worked, 2 years on it altogether? I was working on all 4 of them at the same
Oh,
time.
that's just absolutely
And,
wonderful. Now tell me where did you work your whole working life?
Well, I went to work when I was 17, and I worked for Dr. Howell Stevenson as a dentist. I did lab work.
Oh, Dr. Hollis Stevenson,
And
known
then-
as the Dean of Dentists. And
Yeah. And then we were married in 1952, and I didn't work again until 1969. I went to work for Dr. John and Roger Boulay. And I was there 20 years.
Isn't that interesting? Wonderful career. And you folks met, how did you meet? It's Walter's turn. How did you meet, Walter?
Atwood's, they had a sugaring party,
Yeah.
and I met her.
Isn't that wonderful? A sugaring party? We've been to a few of those.
April Fool's Day it
That
was.
was April Fool's Day.
I don't know if I should be laughing here or not. And what year would that have been? You want to take a guess?
52.
I'll tell you, I had a friend, Beverly Christensen, and she knew Walter because she was from West Shazy. Of course, I was living in Plattsburgh at the time, so she invited me up to go to the party. That was it.
Sugaring party. And I bet you some of our viewers, I know Calvin knows what sugar on snow is. Oh, good stuff,
I
huh?
remember that night there was so much snow, wasn't it? Quite a snowstorm. Well, we made it. Atwoods lived way up in the kind of the hills in West Shazy.
Foggy, I remember.
Oh, foggy. Maybe
Foggy
that was
night
it.
too? Did you drive there? Did you walk there? Do you remember how you got there that
I
night?
drove.
Did you?
Yep.
Yeah, I wonder what you were driving. Maybe were you driving a Ford or a Chevy?
Ford.
Were you? Okay, he's all right now. We'll get that battle going again. So you've obviously had a wonderful life together, and you just decided at some point that the farm was too much for you, and you got rid of it, or how did you happen to move down here to Plattsburgh?
I only had one daughter, so no sons, so I sold the farm. Well, I didn't sell the farm, but I worked at school, Beatontown School. So
Sold the cattle.
yeah, I sold the cattle.
Sold the
64.
60.
Oh, and then you just decided to come down here and
Well, I had a heart attack in 95. 96, he broke his leg. 97, I always say we behaved ourselves. 98, he had a stroke, and by that time, our daughter was ready to sell the farm that year, I think.
then you finally decided to get healthy again. You both
Yeah.
look great. The first time I tried to call you when I heard your name, I tried to call you, you weren't here, and I left a message, and there you were, traipsing off to the hospital again to get well again.
Yeah, that's right, too, yeah.
You spent a few
Yeah.
days in the hospital, but
Yeah.
now you're back again. You're both doing just absolutely fantastic. I want to look at some of the pictures you have here. We can go any direction you want to go. She's got little notes. Everything is perfectly figured out in these books. But these are all, each one of these is a family history? Is that it?
No, this is the LaPlant history.
Okay.
And there's an Allen connected with it. His grandmother was an Allen, but I haven't too much on the Allens. They keep saying we're related to Ethan Allen.
Wouldn't that be interesting, huh?
I got a book of Ethan Allen's, but I
We
couldn't
got the
seem to
spirit
trace
of Ethan Allen right here, never mind out on the lake.
it. And
Well, we can look at, just pick a couple of highlights and we'll maybe show some pictures and you can talk to me a little bit as we go.
well, here was the deed when his great grandfather's name was Vito.
Oh, my goodness, and you
And there's
copied,
a
look,
copy of the.
oh, look at
We
the,
had the whole deed, but I just cut that part
look at
out.
the writing here, Calvin. People, almost everybody who was literate wrote, and at least people who wrote documents, wrote them so beautifully, didn't they? Did you,
Well,
did
his Vito LaPlant, Addie took me downstairs over in the government center to show me where he applied for citizenship,
really?
and he signed his name with an X. That was what was it, 1828? I think it was.
How many times have you seen that? They say
Yeah.
signed with an X, huh?
Yeah.
That's because they couldn't sign
That's
their
what I say,
name.
Addie helped me an awful lot. in
But
differences.
generally, on the old marriage certificates and things, you'd see the X and then you'd see a witness's name, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who witnessed the signature, just like as if it were a notary today, right?
Right.
Oh, I love these old documents. And that was, what year was that, did you say? 17,
1842 or 41.
18? Oh, 1843?
43, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
See, my mind's slipping too.
Oh, no, don't ever worry about that. You could tell
know,
me anything at all and I'd believe
And
you.
these were a couple tax receipts. Well, in fact, when we sold the farm, we figured that old deed there belonged to the farm. So we left it there.
Did you really? Come
Yeah,
on.
related about the farm. I kind of thought that goes with the farm.
See, that's a true historian
And
that
these
would
some-
think like that.
These
Look
are
at
some tax receipts. If you notice the taxes back then.
not very much compared to some of the prices we're paying these days, are they, huh?
It was only 40-some acres, and then the gradually added on till
Only 40 acres? I know
Yeah.
a lot of people wish they had 40 acres today.
we had 258, I think, when we sold it. So-
Did you on 258? Now I didn't ask Roger Blake how much their farm was there. Do you have any idea? Huh?
They had quite a big farm.
They had a pretty big farm. It's, So between the two of you must have owned just about the whole road, huh?
Hogan's close.
We were just a half mile down from the turnpike, because I used to walk the.
Oh, you did walk
Was
it?
it a half mile or a quarter mile?
What else? Just go through a few of the pages here.
Okay.
I might, for those people who are just tuning us in, we're at the home of Walter and Betty LaPlant at 6 Lincoln Lane in Plattsburgh. People who have been around the North Country for a long time and who know a lot about the North Country history. And we're going to have a little history lesson as we sit right around their living room, dining room table here today.
Now, this was a what? A store on the corner of the Duquette Road and the turnpike.
West
Beekman Town Creamery Association.
Oh, my goodness.
Picked them
And
out.
this picture was loaned to me by Lawrence.
Oh,
Schroeder.
okay, so we can turn the picture right around and show it right here. The picture was taken, I'm smart enough to read it anyway, so I'm not making this up, folks. It was taken in 1919, West Beekman Town Store, Ice House and Blacksmith Shop, and Creamery. How's that for a combination business? Located at the corner of the Turnpike and the Duquette Road, but it burned 3 years before I was born in 1934.
And Gordy, we know that picture was not taken on a Sunday because there's clothes on
There's
the line.
clothes hanging up. I think there's a couple of long johns hanging up there. maybe it was a fall or winter day.
Across the road.
Yeah, and
Was
then, okay, there's,
Methodist church.
now this is, I have this here to a frame. Walter's grandfather, Albert, owned some stock
In the creamery?
in the creamy.
Oh, I got to turn it around again. That's kind of neat. To just sit and look at a document like that and know that one of your elder ancestors was sitting at a table somewhere and dipped his pen in the ink and signed his name to it. You know, don't you feel a little sorry for people who don't feel history the same way we do?
I love it.
I mean, you know, we don't get locked in the past and we don't say, oh, I wish I was 18 again, because life goes on in segments. But isn't it fun just to go back and touch a little bit of the
And
past?
that's the schoolhouse.
Oh,
Yeah.
boy.
I've gone over that.
And you spent 2 years doing these
I
genealogies?
think I worked a couple of years on them.
Now that's
And
the
when I
old-
got done with these, I decided I'd do one of our church.
Oh, my goodness. Now
Now
this
this is the Methodist,
is the same.
the Methodist church.
Now is that
That
what?
was on the opposite corner from the creamery.
Methodist, Wesleyan Methodist, or
No, just Methodist,
the
Methodist Episcopal.
Called the West Beekman Town Methodist Church.
That's after it hadn't been used for a while.
In a long time.
And then
That
this
would have
is
been
a-
1947, I think it says on the back of it.
So, yeah. This is what it looked like originally when it was in the,
Oh, that's way back when, huh?
Yeah.
Florence Williams Gibo gave you the picture. Can you get it, Calvin? I'm turning it kind of funny. Uh-huh.
and then, these are the buildings as they appear today.
Oh, your buildings,
The farm,
the
yeah.
farm buildings, okay. Well, they changed a little bit down through the years, those farm buildings, as buildings that started out a long time ago. What year was the farmhouse built, Walter, do you think?
Well, we have a picture up there with some people sitting in front of it.
Oh, up on the, yeah, Calvin can zoom on
Oh, he
that.
can, okay. And Balder's grandmother, I'm pretty sure, is holding, there were 11 children in the family, and I
Oh,
can
boy.
pick out the two oldest boys, and then there was a nanny. She's sitting in the rocking chair, I think, and Balder's mother's holding Garfield, I'm pretty
Oh,
sure.
Garfield, okay.
And he was born in 1880, so the house was there
Before that,
before that, yeah.
the best part of it is,
But they said that at first, somebody told us that they lived in a little log cabin down near the brook, which was about, what, 1,000 feet or so down the road, yeah. And then, I don't know much about the building of the house up
well,
there.
you look at that house, Walter, and you think that your mother had 11 kids?
Grandmother.
Grandmother had 11 kids born in the house.
Yeah.
You didn't go traipsing off to the hospital to have a baby.
I've got them all listed here.
Oh, my goodness.
And then,
And yes, it
there's his grandmother right there. This was a tin type, I know
Oh.
that isn't exact name for it, but, and
take a look at this, Calvin.
Balder's Aunt Della LaPlant from Champlain had it sent to New York City and had a picture painted. Like
Had
it
a
was
picture, oh, I see.
Yeah, it
A
was
painting
beautiful,
done
yeah.
of the original tintype.
Yeah, and that was the only picture that our daughter really wanted when we sold the farm, so she's got that over. And
I wonder how old she would have been when that picture was taken.
she's got a wedding ring on.
She does.
They
15
They said she was 15.
15 when she was married.
Mhm.
Well, you know, you had to get the family started early because you
Yeah.
had to have some kids to work on the farm.
Yeah.
But doesn't she look like any?
Oh,
like
it was a
fif-
beautiful picture. It was just a
beautiful
beautiful
girl.
picture.
She looks like a
Mhm.
15-year-old girl that might be the daughter of some people watching this program who they just dressed up in old clothes
Mhm.
to have her picture taken. That's absolutely.
And
when-
she met her husband. He was working up on the corner of the turnpike in the LaPlant Road. And she was working as a domestic there, wasn't she? Yeah. And he was working as the hired help, you know. She used to think if she could just marry Albert LaPlant, she never would have any more troubles. Or problems. I don't know why they worried her. She had 11 children after that.
We can't ask her if she had any problems. Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
Well, this book just contains so
this
many.
is the genealogy, Albert and Ruth Allen. And these are all the children
Oh
here.
my goodness!
This was Walter's
This was
father here.
not done with the help of a computer,
No.
just with a typewriter. It's amazing.
Now this was his grandmother LaPlant's prayer. We found that, I got that from Uncle Clifford's in Champlain, and this was her prayer.
You want me to read it, or you want to get a picture of it? Dear Heavenly Father, we thank Thee, Thou hast brought us safely to see the light of another beautiful morning. We thank Thee for our home, for food to eat and for clothes to wear, and for all the mercies and blessings Thou art daily bestowing upon us. Wilt Thou bless these children this day, and keep them from accident and from harm. But above all, wilt Thou give them a heart to love and serve Thee. Be with the poor and needy, the sick and the afflicted. Prepare the dying for death and the living for life. Bless us all. Give us wisdom and courage and health and strength, and save us all. We ask it in Jesus' name, amen. All together, the Lord's Prayer. Isn't that wonderful?
And I've had this in the wrong place, but when they sold the church,
Did I read it like a preacher one?
when they sold the church, I don't know who got it, but anyway, we ended up with the pulpit Bible from out of that church.
Really?
So when we were getting ready to this big, how
Oh,
big they
yeah.
were. So I donated it to the Beatmantown. This Bible is from the first West Beatmantown Second Methodist Episcopal Church, and I donated it down to the.
The Historical Archives in Beekman.
Yeah, they were starting that.
What? Because the history has to be preserved. And
Mhm.
if
It was
Walter
in-
and Betty aren't going to do it, who's going to do it? That's
It's
what I
really
say.
in pretty good shape too. And
Well, we're gonna start looking at other
Yeah,
stuff.
that's-
I know there's
Walter's
enough stuff
grandfather was killed on.
killed in a runaway in a wagon, horse and wagon.
Wheel came off. The horses.
That made them.
Yeah.
Oh my! Thrown out of his wagon, horse became frightened, and broken breeching and started to run down the hill near the country home. That's the headline. After that, this is the story.
He died in the county home.
And-
They took him in there,
And
didn't-
to show you how the writing was a little different in the old days, it says several ribs were found to be broken, spine badly injured, and about 2 o'clock, Mr. LaPlant breathed his last.
He bled to death.
Isn't that amazing? Dear, it says, Dear Albert died on May 4th, 1909.
Yeah, that was taken. I had that copied out of our Bible too.
And the old Bibles are a great source of history, aren't they? That pulpit Bible, I bet you that weighed 20 pounds.
Now this goes into the children in there.
Okay, we just, we have so much ground to cover
Yeah.
here today. I just want
The
to
next-
go through it quickly. What else
The
you
next
got?
thing I marked
Oh, look at this.
was
Look.
that's the school of Moore's, and this was Walter's mother's graduation picture.
Oh, you gotta be kidding.
That's her
Oh.
right there, that one in that corner.
And I've seen these pictures before, and they're still exciting. Is that a good way to hold it, Calvin?
I've got a Xerox copy, and I guess it was the Brewster strip at that.
And you probably have every name written down, and that was taken in the front of this school, right, in Moore's. Let me hold the book up so you can get a picture of what the schoolhouse looked like way back when. You can see the archway there.
He got burned in it.
Did it? The old Moore School?
Yes, because I wasn't the one.
But this is a piece of history that I'm sure is connected with the lives of many people who are still alive.
She went there. They used to have to go and stay for the week.
Yeah.
And her brother, that's Uncle Guy Bruce, he went there the same time she did. What else did they used to tell about that?
It's a great
Yeah.
picture.
This was a picture that was loaned to me, and I had this
You
copy
had a copy
made.
made. Isn't it nice that we can do that? Now we can scan these old pictures into computers and
And then when she went there, she did what they called the training class. And when you went 1 year at the training class, you could go out and teach.
oh, that's right, 1 year of training. It's not like now. You don't have to get the 4-year education. I think I can get it high enough so Calvin can get a little shot of that, and you can get the flavor of the writing and how it was. Oh my goodness, isn't that the neatest?
Let's see, this is,
Oh.
Wow, this is Uncle Clifford's picture. These are clippings. I added two. The original, and then I added two. This is.
Oh, you did?
They added.
You
this
did
is-
the original, and then you had an addendum at the end, huh? But what great
When people gave me
treasures.
things after I finished the history, and of course it was too late, I had the copies all done, but I added them in here. And,
Oh,
and this was Albert LaPlant's
Be careful now. That's so beautiful and old.
diary.
Look at this, Calvin.
They were
Diary.
living in Burlington, he and his sister. And he mentions, in reading that, he mentions that, I forget what, he was working someplace. And then he mentions that he rode overnight on a train to Andover. Well, I looked and I thought, Andover, Vermont, you wouldn't ride on a train overnight to get to Andover, Vermont. So I said, I looked in the encyclopedia, and there was Andover, Massachusetts, and there was Phillips Academy there. Nobody ever mentioned this, told us this at all. So I wrote, and he never mentioned exactly the name of the school, but you could tell he was living in a dorm.
Yeah.
Just what he'd say.
1866.
So I looked up Phillips Academy, took a chance, and
There it was.
they wrote this back, told me yes, he did, he attended there, he was a member of the class of 1868.
Albert James LaPlante.
And this is the
'Cause I
copy.
told her now we could do that with a little stroke of the mouse, in these days. But when you did this 20,
Yeah, and this was a
20 years
copy
ago.
apparently of what they have of their records of it.
oh, 1909,
Yeah.
1845.
That's his parents.
Oh, Beekmantown, farmer. Died Beekmantown in May 19.
And I noticed that they changed, his father's name, as I said, was Vital, and they changed it
to
here to Victor.
Somebody just typed it up.
Yeah.
A little.
and
But
then- I guess that's,
this it's
this is the one of Garfield that used to teach in that school.
oh yeah, I love that diary because it's just daily. People kept diaries like journals. It was daily activities.
There was also,
I went around the house and I went up to see so and so, and I traveled back and
he
forth.
also
and-
kept track of finances in the back here.
Oh, we did. Oh, look at this.
Um,
I want to show some of the writing in here so people can get an idea what one of these diaries 140 some years ago looked like. That was January 1st, 1866. And that wasn't just last Tuesday morning, you know what I mean? I did my work around the house in the morning and then went up street on an errand.
I can't remember the name of the people he kept mentioning, and I took for granted he worked for them
It's
in St. Albans.
but those are treasures. Those are absolute treasures.
And,
Now wait a minute. Who this is?
that's Garfield.
that's
They used
Garfield.
to teach at that school.
Who taught at the little schoolhouse? We got to make all these connections
There
there.
was a fireman in Boston.
Oh, he was a.
Yeah, that picture's.
Oh, that was as a fireman in Boston, and he
Pretty
died.
athletic. He could,
He was. He lived to 1957.
had to go up a ladder and come back down a certain time.
Oh, you did, huh? They had. Yeah, there's firemen today have to take agility tests, and that is paid firemen.
Yeah.
And
He used to live on Oak Street here in Plattsburgh,
oh, he did.
and I can remember visiting him. 57.
He was a game
Game
warden.
warden.
Oh, he was a game warden. Oh, okay.
And let's see what else is in here.
It's
Okay,
all
now
neat. I wish we had time
we're
to pour
getting
through every single
Back
page.
to
But,
our own family here. That's an aerial view of the farm. That's the same picture over there too.
oh, I see. Yeah, it's over on the wall on the side. We
And
can
then
look at that
Walter's,
later.
Father was a member of the
You can get the game.
Dairyman's League. These are some Dairyman's League certificates.
Oh, I love them. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. Calvin, take a look at this. When's the last time you even heard? Does the Dairyman's League doesn't exist anymore, does it, or does it? I mean, I hate to. It does today. Not being in the farming business, I have no idea.
Dairy League.
It's called Dairy League now, and it was Dairyman's League back
And
then.
then we had a
Oh, look
an old
at
home
that.
comfort kitchen stove. So and I moved it out on the porch, and I used to put
There's a good name for you, the
Yeah.
Home Comfort Kitchen Stove.
and I used to put plants on it, and things like that.
Oh.
And so when we got ready to move, I said to Walter, "What are we going to do with that stove? You don't weigh
Oh, they're heavy.
quite a few
A lot of
pounds."
cast iron in there.
And Walter has a was his niece's son down in Pennsylvania, and he'd come up and he'd look through what I call my museum. He was always interested in it, so I wrote to his mother first, and I said, would Ben be interested in getting that stove, that home comfort stove? And, well, I'd heard through his sister that he was. So his mother wrote back, Kathy, and she said, oh, she says, Ben's delighted to think that you want him to have that stove. But she says, the problem is, how are we going to get it to Pennsylvania? But they come up to a camp in Silver Lake every summer, and one of the fellows had a truck, and he took it down, and then went around by Pennsylvania.
Home comfort was
Yeah,
the trademark that everybody was
It was in-
familiar with for the home.
fairly good shape.
You could buy. You
4
could,
years old when they bought that.
Yeah,
really? 4 years old? It's probably still going strong.
Yep.
Isn't that amazing? And some of them had a water tank on them. They had a warming oven on the top, right? And
just had a little shelf on one side.
Reservoir.
Yeah,
reservoir.
yeah.
Oh my. Fond memories even for me.
Yeah.
This is wonderful stuff. Now you've got photographs here to show us. What do you got here? Just, you want to explain these as I'll hold them up and you explain them. Go ahead, Walt.
Well, these two kind of go together.
Okay.
Tractor school.
Oh, tractor school. Okay, let
They
us.
started using tractors.
Really?
They showed the tractors.
Well, what year would we?
Case and
Case tractors?
They had the
20.
meeting inside City Hall someplace, right?
So the 20s. somewhere.
Yeah. And then they lined them up against
This
the
is downtown
church.
Plattsburgh?
Yeah,
Oh, no kidding.
this church. Trinity Church.
Trinity
Church.
Episcopal
Yeah.
Church. We want to do a history of Trinity Episcopal Church soon because they have a historian and a lot of great artifacts there.
And we can pick out Roger's father.
Like, Key Hogan.
And a Mr. Hogan,
Cleveland,
yeah.
we used to call him Key.
Did you, Keith?
Key Hogan, yeah.
Boy, those are great shots. And that's that is, yeah, Trinity Episcopal Church, and there it is, the old Case tractors. You know, I hadn't even noticed before, but they got iron wheels, right? All iron
There's the
wheels.
old projector.
Come on, is that a movie
Isn't that a
projector?
projector?
Oh
They must have been
my
showing
goodness.
slides or something.
Someday we'll go back in that room and show people what that room looks like today. Look at that old projector on the... Oh boy. Tractor school in downtown Plattsburgh. And these just stayed in the family for a long, long time?
Yeah, they got a few stains on them. But
Hey, you know what happens? Things hang around. Oh, who is this auspicious
those are the
Bunch of people.
supervisors.
supervisors where? Town of Beekman
Town of Beekmantown. Your father was supervisor from what, 1932?
Yeah, you get a relative in there.
Was it
Yeah,
30?
32.
Two.
36.
To 36.
Name some of the names off the back there, but just...
I had two of these, and Bob Venn's uncle was in one, so
Oh, was he really? Now, wait a
So I
minute.
can-
You went to school with Bob Venn, did you, for a while?
Mhm. They lived up in the Moores area.
Oh, just for a couple of years, though, you think, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Who are the people, some of the people in there that we might recognize?
Tulaski from
Oh, yeah.
Dannemora, LaPlant from Beekmantown, Pattonod from Shazy,
Oh, yeah.
and Orion from Peru, Gagner from Clinton, Venn from Saranac, that was
Oh.
Bob's uncle,
Oh, yeah.
and Goslin
Goslin.
from Schuyler Falls, Kennedy from Champlain, Lamberton from Morris, and he was my father's first cousin.
Oh, really? Oh, they're very...
And then the front row was a Pattonod from Ellenburg, and a Stackpole from Black Brook.
Now, you see, there's another name that's changed a lot. Patnod and Patnode, right? Different spellings, different places. Oh, what great stuff. Oh, what
Now that's
treasure.
that-
Is that same
Yeah, that's
creamery?
that
Oh, that's
same
the one that we looked at.
certificate.
The creamery certificate that we looked. Oh, there were creameries all over the place back in those days. We're going to do hopefully, we're going to do a television show on the history of the various creameries and dairies in this area. Because they're just, how many can you remember? They just don't exist
Now, this was how
anymore.
they made pictures years ago. They
Yeah.
had this tape put
Yeah.
around. I've got a roll of tape, but I don't think it holds
Spec-
much very
spec-
much. Yeah, you just and they,
Put it around, is that glass?
yeah, this
Around
is
the
glass.
glass.
And they put it on a piece of pasteboard, apparently.
And,
That's
oh,
my mother and her sister, and that's my father's sister and her husband.
all right, just look at these.
Moors.
I want you to take a look at the hats. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not sure I could hold my head up with a hat like that. We went to Mass on Easter Sunday morning, and I said to my wife as we were walking in, when we go to church now, I want you to tell me how many women have hats on today, on Easter Sunday morning, and remember your childhood, and
Oh,
remember
man.
that you didn't dare to go to church on a Sunday morning, a woman, without a hat. The Easter bonnets, right?
I said
Nowadays, people just don't wear them.
I always had a larger head than they made the hat for. I always thought, and I hated to wear a hat. Now, when they talk about when we get to heaven, we're going to wear a crown, I said, couldn't interest me. That's all I can think of is those tight hats.
Oh, so you don't need a crown. As long as you got the wings, you don't care about the crown, right, Betty? We're in the home of Walter and Betty LaPlant at 6 Lincoln Lane in Plattsburgh, and we're on a treasure hunt here, and Betty's got all the treasures. Look at this motley crew. All right, just show the... He'll lock the picture in there, and then I'll read the back of it, and we'll let people know what it is. Men who worked at Purdy's. Now, Purdy's, as I remember, was a sawmill, wasn't it?
In the woods. Worked in the woods.
And what town would that be in?
Altona.
The town of Purdy's sawmill in the town of Altona.
Randy Beach lives there now, doesn't he?
Oh, I bet he does. Now that you
Pretty
mention
close.
that,
He did, anyway. I know.
one of the best television shows ever recorded anywhere was at a sawmill, right, Calvin? What was his name?
His name was Mr. Jimmy Misek up in the Misek Road in back of Moore's, and it's probably the most popular program that Hometown Cable has ever done.
Calvin has been doing this kind of thing since 1983. Everywhere I go, people bring that show up. I walked into this house. The first thing Walter says was, "That show at the sawmill, we remember seeing that." The language, the way the man taught. I mean, that show captured an era.
You still live?
Oh, no. As a matter of fact, he didn't live an awful long time after you recorded that show, did he, Calvin?
No, he lived. We lucked out because he was never in as good a health as he was when we did that show. Within a week, he'd had a back problem, and we did it in November. So if we waited till the next spring to be able to go out there, we wouldn't have been able to do it. No, but he actually outlived Bob Venn. He died
really?
a few months after Bob died.
1997.
Yeah, but in his obituary, it was mentioned that he'd been in that show, and it fittingly so, because we're just as proud of that show as he was of having been in it.
He's quite a mechanic. He fixed anything.
Really? Well, just watching that show at least 15 times since I've started doing this one. We like to repeat the old ones. It is like a time machine for me. And that's, Calvin and I have a philosophy. That's why we do this program. We're capturing a piece of history. And in so many ways, it's like the 20 Mule Team Borax. It just seems to go back in history, and we capture this interview with you two, which will be pleasant to watch for many, many years. But you've repeated all this history for us that goes back since almost the beginning of time.
That's Walter's father right there.
Oh, that was Walter's.
That's me.
That-
Father, yeah.
Yeah,
Father,
that-
yeah.
Yeah.
I know it was one of you, Walter. I didn't know. There's somebody who had hair back in those days, anyway, right?
A real young man there, too.
Oh boy, oh boy!
He was born in
You're pretty heavy.
1888.
Didn't mean to make.
Which one was he?
He's the one in the middle on the top row in the middle.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, isn't that neat? Well, we're going to switch gears a little bit here and move around and look at some wonderful things. What else have we got over here?
Well, this is-
Oh,
getting
yes.
over it. I had this picture. Now, this is my family, but I had this picture.
You're
and
entitled to get your family in here, too,
and I just recently donated it to the collection up in Morris.
Oh, you
They've
did?
started up there. But I had the original picture. And this was taken in 1895, and it was O'Brien's Corner baseball team.
You gotta be kidding. Calvin, take a look at this.
My grandfather is
Dudley.
Dudley Coakley. Yeah.
Oh, my,
Yeah.
my. You got it? Isn't
Right there.
that...
That's my grandfather.
woods.
He tells.
So he's in the middle row on the left-hand side, taken in 1895, one of O'Brien's Corners baseball team, taken at Canaan Hill, Boy, we've been talking about old Sam Smith. He maybe went to a ball game back there. Antoine Wood, Edmund Wood, Charles Lamberton, Eric Wood, Dudley Coakley, there he is. Artie O'Brien, that's A-R-D-I-E O'Brien, Casper Rowe, or Rao, maybe Rao, huh, in those days, Percy Soden, James O'Brien, Reverend Kernahan, just to keep the boy sober maybe, pastor of the Baptist Church in Allenburg Depot. Oh my goodness, and the buggies in the
So I
background
figured
and
it belonged in Morris.
baseball bats and caps and
The
gloves
Woods, I'm related to the Woods, too.
Are you
So,
really?
Yeah. Mhm.
oh, that's another
Yeah.
very, very popular North Country
Linda.
name.
Linda Boyer.
Oh.
She's always tracing this. My grandmother was a Shea.
Oh, no kidding.
So-
You're connected with Linda. I'm
Yeah,
going
I'm connected with
to
them.
be speaking at a veterans event that she's sponsoring.
Taught in their school.
Oh, yeah,
One of
his
the
mother.
Woods taught in,
His mother, yeah, she was a Parks. And she
and taught in your school? In the District 8 school? The famous school that
Way back.
started all this
Huh?
stuff?
Way back then.
Yeah, of course she was married, I think, wasn't it? Yeah.
Oh, isn't that great? What else you got now? You can't stop now. You got us all wound up here. We got to keep.
Well, we're changing gears here.
We
because
don't
this
mind
is the
changing
church.
gears. We'll check the church, of course. We'll check anything
I
you
didn't
want to
know if
look
you wanted
at.
to look at the other pictures. in
Well,
here
we'll
or
do
not.
that too. As long as we're sitting at the table, we might as well take a break.
We had records in the Wesleyan Church in West Shazy that went back to 1839. Before it was a, what was I?
Protestant.
They called it the Methodist Protestant. That was before it was the Wesleyan
Oh,
Church.
yes, yes.
So, I asked the board if I could bring the records home, and all I did was condense them. I didn't.
I mean, what you did is a mammoth
And
job, and
I don't
don't
know if-
belittle it. It's
I'm sure
amazing and wonderful.
The connection with this was our organs and piano player at the time.
Well, wait a minute. Let's show their pictures.
That's
to-
Roger Blake's mother.
Well, there you go. See?
No.
What was her name?
No.
Mildred Blake on the right-hand side. And who was the other one? Hazel
Pierce.
Pierce.
Mm-hmm.
Got him?
And then,
Mildred Blake was first elected assistant organist in 1931. Isn't that wonderful?
and all I really did was, I just condensed the minutes. And you probably heard of Loyal Smith.
Oh, goodness.
He left the money to build this church in memory of his mother in West Shazy.
Oh, now, see, we've heard of Loyal Smith a long time before that, but we really learned about Loyal Smith when early in this current series of our little corner interviews, we went to City Hall and took a tour with Keith Hercolo and learned a lot about Loyal Smith and what great things he did for the North Country. Yeah, the YMCA. Let's take a look at the church. I want to show the church first. Huh?
Champlain Valley Hospital.
Yeah, absolutely. Now that's a beautiful shot right there in that
Yeah,
photograph.
you go to West Shazy and go to your right, 374.
Oh, did you get it? Let's hold it up there. Calvin almost got it there. Okay, that's great. And that's a shot that was taken 17 years ago by the looks of things. Loyal. Oh, there it is, his last will and testament.
Mm-hmm.
Third, I give to the Wesleyan Methodist Church of West Shazy, New York, the sum of $15,000 for the purpose of constructing a church edifice and parsonage upon the approval of my executors and plans of said church building and parsonage. And that's the one that Bob
Came up.
and Sam and Calvin's brother Sam came up and did you when you did
And
the
he-
anniversary?
Bob was there on a Sunday, and he stayed for the service and for the snacks afterwards and so on and so forth. We had a great day. That was the 150th anniversary.
We ended up talking a lot about late Bob Venn because he was so instrumental in working with Calvin and
Now,
taking
I found
hundreds of
this
videos.
in a cupboard down at the church. And
And you said so, right there. This
Yep.
picture was found in a cupboard. Now
that was
hangs on the
Mrs.
wall
Smith,
next
who
to
the
the
church was built in memory of. Loyal Smith's mother.
Clorinda Smith in memory of, and we can prove it, can't we, huh?
Buried in the cemetery.
Highland Cemetery. Yeah.
In the Highland Cemetery,
Mm-hmm.
where's that now?
We used to call it the Douglas Cemetery. You know where Andy Tusignant's?
Yep.
Okay, it's right behind his house.
Oh, okay. Boy, is that a,
And they put that plaque in the entryway.
talk about a stately, serious
And here
person,
it
you
was
know?
just kicking around on a shelf. Her name was on it too, I think, yeah.
Well, that's,
And now these are pictures inside the church, but they're not that good, really.
just great. So you did the whole history of the church, huh?
And this is a record of some of the reading. Oh, well, as I said, it was a Methodist Protestant first in 1839 when we got started with the records. And then in 1843, 44 or so, the Wesleyan Church was formed from because of the issue of slavery. And the people that went to the Methodist Protestant Church became Wesleyan Methodists. So,
It's confusing, but, you know, it's,
yeah, that was,
the Protestant church has gone through so many changes
Right.
down through the years.
they were opposed to slavery. And
Oh, sure.
the man that started it said he felt that no man had a right to own another person.
Makes perfect sense to us today, doesn't it? But it was a whole different way of thinking back in those days, and this is a good time to point out that although we think of slavery as being a southern issue, there were slaves here, right here in Clinton County and in all the counties here in northern New York, and that's another issue that Keith Herklow has been working with, because it was very, very difficult to give a name to these black folks who went through so much here in the North Country, because they were listed as property. Can you imagine people being listed as property, and so their names weren't generally listed? So anyway, you've got this whole book. How long did you spend on this one, young lady? How long did you spend on this history?
I don't know. But what I did, I just took the minutes, and I didn't really write any history. I just condensed them. They'd say,
The minutes are history, right?
yeah,
It's there.
so-and-so made a motion. It was seconded by so-and-so, and it was voted. And they went into all this detail, and I just say it was voted on such and such a day to do such and such.
Brother Wright, see, remember? Brother Wright wrote to the Esty Organ Company for prices. Wait a minute, that's an Esty organ right over there, isn't
There's
it?
no record of them ever buying it
Right
from
over
a
there,
company.
isn't that
Yes. Mhm.
Oh,
That's not the one.
No,
but that's not the
apparently,
one, but the chapel organ, no reduction in price, $136.
yeah. And this couple in West Shazy donated. I understand, that's what we've been told. They donated this organ to the church.
Oh, my.
And there was a lady said that, she was a niece of them. She said, yes, I can see that organ in my, what that
Just,
was.
and it's, so you just, there's June 15th, that's my birth date, 1918. Building committee reported cost of woodshed for the parsonage, $235.25. Oh, and voted that the pastor inquire into the cost of raising the steeple and the bell. Oh, just, it's like it's like the minutes of that District 8 schoolhouse, the things that
Right.
concern people. It's just, here you go. In January 25th, 1919, the church sheds painted and the work paid for. Whole cost, $21.
And then
A bargain at half the price, huh?
let's see, what was I going to say there about that? In 1950, what? They built an addition on the back of the church. We didn't have
You
any.
look at Walter like Kay and I look at each other. What are you talking about, lady?
The only thing that we had when we first started going there was a church, and then there was what we used to call a prayer room. It was where we held our prayer meeting, and then
Yeah.
that connected to the parsonage.
Yep.
And we didn't have any Sunday school rooms. We had them, one in the choir, and one in the front of the church, and one in the back. So they voted to build an addition on the back of the church.
Yeah.
And that was in 50 or 60. Let me see, I can find it in here.
Oh, well, you don't have to look it up. Otto Finch. Oh, my goodness. There's another name
Oh,
that's
yeah, and
very, very
this was
familiar.
another thing that was interesting.
Wait a minute. Otto Finch
Charlie's
was
father.
Charlie's father.
Yes.
Oh, see? You're going to get me going here.
Yeah.
My dear friend Charlie Finch, his dad, Otto Finch, and my father, Russell Little, were friends, fellow ministers.
I was talking to him the other day.
Were you,
Charles.
Charlie? He's such a good friend and a good guy, and he was born and brought up on the turnpike down there, I believe, right? And went to that Wesleyan church where his dad
Well,
was
this
the
was the
pastor.
old church. it was built in about 1880. That's before Loyal Smith left the money to build the new one
The new
across
one?
the street, right
Well,
across the street.
that's beautiful, because that's a postcard that you just pasted right on the page. And we'll get a view of it right there. Have I got it where you can see it, Calvin? Okay. That's the
There's
old
very
one.
little space, the parking space. It used to be L.G. Robinson's grain and lumber business and so on. And then, let me see if I got a picture of that quilt.
I hope our viewing audience appreciates how much time this lady spent compiling this information, not just for our TV show here today, but for posterity, for anybody else who wants to look at it in the future.
Oh, wait a minute.
And it's,
When Elsie Mattoon was pastor there, the ladies made a quilt to present to him.
oh, they did?
Yep. And now I can't find the picture of the
Well,
quilt.
don't worry about it.
And so when they,
Next page. Next page. Next page.
Right here,
It looks like there might be a quilt on the next page.
after this, right? Is that what you're
oh
talking
yes, there.
about? Oh, Calvin.
Yeah.
Look at it. Leave it to the guy with the camera to get a good
I
picture
knew
of
it was
the
in
quilt.
there someplace.
All right, tell me about it.
And each lady in the church embroidered a scripture verse on a block, and they presented it to the Mattoons. Well, Reverend Mrs. Mattoon died, and their son, I guess it was, passed on to him. And so finally when he was, how was it, he passed it on to Ruby, because they said it belongs in West Shazy. Well, anyway, Ruby Payne. And so Ruby, when I had my museum, she gave it to me. So this is a quilt here. I had it hung up in one of the rooms upstairs where I had my collectibles. And then,
Piety.
huh? A
Piety.
piety quilt, they called it.
Oh, the piety
I
quilt.
took it down
huh?
to a quilt show here at the government center, and they were going to make up a book. And they told me, wanted me to send a picture of it and so on. And then they wrote me and said that they had more entries than they had room for. So maybe they'd do another one and put our quilt in. So
Well,
when
that's a
I
very
thought,
nice
well,
thing to do.
what am I going to do with that? But it happens that, let me see, Royal Mattoon and, what's her name, his sister? I can't think of her name either. Lived in the area, so I gave it to his granddaughter.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Well, how magnanimous you are to give things away where you think they should be.
Yeah.
And I suppose why not? You know, you want to give it to somebody who's
Now, those are hymnals. And
hymnals.
These,
If
these are all presented.
Dave Reed's wife.
Yeah, Dave Reed's wife. It's,
most people who know me know that I love to draw. And I didn't think of it until just now. But now I know where my drawing career started, because not that my father was a boring preacher, mind you, but I'd always have to sit in the front row with my mother, and I'd always squirm. And to get me to stop squirming, my mother would hand me a pencil. And she never told me what I was supposed to do with the pencil, but I'd open the hymn book, and right in the front there was always a nice, clean flyleaf. And so I would draw pictures. If any of those hymnals exist anymore, you're going to find the strangest pictures of World War II airplanes, and anything in my life that I could draw a picture of in those hymnals.
well, we needed new hymnals, so people donated them, either in memory and honor.
I
and
remember
so on
that
and
too.
so
Bob and Bev Christensen,
Mhm.
you know, a lot of people,
Yeah. And then
a lot of names, Rigsby's.
this was donated in memory of Mrs. Glenn Robbins. And then this was presented to the First Wesleyan Methodist Church by Mrs. L. Lawrence and Mrs. D.L. Bassett. Now, they were connected up with Loyal Smith.
Oh, they were. Let me just show these pictures so that Calvin, our audience, I forget while I'm enjoying the pictures that we should probably show them to the people out there too every now and again. Some nice things.
There's only one thing about that communion picture. It turned black.
Oh, it did?
Every few weeks. Every
So
month.
somebody had to go shine the silver,
Yeah.
huh?
Yeah, and these are in memory of Floyd Tyler, Floyd Tyler Sr. And then, that's this organ here.
Oh, that's this organ?
Yeah.
And this organ was in the church? at one time, and so
And
there's
they sold it
we can
because
prove it.
they had 2 electric organs and 2 pianos, and they didn't need a pump organ too, so that's how they put it. The board decided to sell it, and I put a bid
Just
in.
look at the
Yeah.
wonderful condition that organ
And then
is
we
in
had
today.
Leona,
Noah's Ark.
Leona Barber, she's a great woodworker,
Oh,
and she built this
yes.
Noah's Ark for the children's
Oh,
room.
wasn't that beautiful?
And then that's a pulpit that was donated in memory of Julia Lemoy. And that's a chair. I came, the seat of it it was once owned by L.C. Mattoon.
Yeah.
We had a van at one time that was donated by Edith Murray and Brent Blake. At the time this was taken, Brent Blake was the one that owned it. So
Oh my goodness! Isn't that a wonderful history? Did you make another copy of this, or is this you made another copy for the church itself, or what?
well, I asked different ones in the church if they'd like a copy, and I guess I gave them to them, didn't I?
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Just
I just
so much
enjoyed
fun.
doing it, and I thought it'd be nice to have it in the church with some of the families that
Oh,
were
that's
there.
beautiful.
Yeah.
What else you got over on the table? Before we start, I walk through
Well,
your
this,
wonderful
I think
home.
it's just, this is his diary.
Oh, you
grandfather.
Come on.
Oh.
You typed that whole diary?
Yeah, and then I copied it.
Oh,
You see,
you're
I
saying
didn't.
that just like it was nothing. You saw that old diary that we had before, and you had to say, first of all, you had to figure out what the language was in it.
And I also copied the school minutes, but I found out I made a mistake in one name. I couldn't get the difference between an S and an L. They made them to look alike.
Oh, wait a
'Cause
minute. I
You
think
mentioned it in the
I mentioned that
column
in the
Sunday.
column, and I
Yeah.
didn't know if it was an S or an L, or one place it wasn't there, and another place it was there.
Yeah.
So
So I
Okay.
marked my copy over. I took your word for it.
oh, don't ever, oh my goodness, big mistake, time out. You took my word for it. Don't believe everything you read in the paper. Don't believe everything you read in the paper.
You got an award for that. You did tell me.
Did you really? For this history? Tell me.
Not this one, the McMaster's
Oh,
Award. They were advertising, it was on the radio, about the McMaster's Award, and I said to Walter, you know, it'd be nice to have our church, write up something about our church. So I took this, and also, it was a history of Wesleyan Methodism in Clinton County. And I also took in some of the district minutes, because I used to have the conference there in West Shazy. And I turned it in, had the 3,000 words, and I know 3,000 words are an awful lot of words. I took it down, I turned it in, and one night I came home from work, and he was working days apparently at that time. He says, you better read your mail. He never tells me to read, never told me to read my mail. And I looked at the envelope, and here it was from, was it Alan Everest? Yeah,
Oh, Alan Everest.
this is from Alan Everest. I thought, don't tell me. Yep, I'd won the McMaster's Award.
For those of our viewers who may not be familiar with it, the McMaster's Award, and I think they still give it, is a very prestigious North Country award that's been given for many years to somebody who writes a very special piece of history. And so there are sometimes dozens or hundreds of entries.
I
And
got, my picture appeared in the paper there too. That's it in that frame over there, the bottom
Yeah.
one,
On the bottom.
yeah.
you're very special. I don't know if
Uh.
Calvin can find it from. He can just zoom in on stuff with that camera.
Tall guy that was it?
Dawson, wasn't it?
Dawson.
Yeah. Wasn't there a Dawson that had something to do with that?
Probably.
Yeah.
I remember.
He's from the college.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I
Big
remember
tall.
very well. Oh yes, of course.
Yeah. So I went
well,
down
now
and
you-
got my award.
I remember promoting the contest year after year
Mm-hmm.
after year, and reading some of the entries, which were just.
I just figured I'd do the best I could, and
Tremendous.
it's nice for that. It becomes their property, I guess, the Historical Association.
Yeah.
And maybe somebody read it, whether I won a prize or not. But I
But
ended
it
up.
really it pleases you when somebody recognizes your hard work. This isn't something you sit down and finish on a Sunday afternoon.
No.
I mean, I can appreciate that. What's the blue book now? Did you
No,
tell
this
me?
is Walter's.
Oh, that's the
Yeah.
diary from way back
I-
when. Wait a minute, there's another book over there. Did we look at that one? I don't know. Did we? Okay, just want to make sure we
No,
get
that's
everything.
the baseball team.
Oh, we got the baseball team. All right. So now, just before we leave this table, gee, I was just settling into this chair. Just before we leave this table, I want to talk a little bit about the history of Wesleyan Methodism in this county because it tracks pretty close to my history and my dad's history. My dad was never a Wesleyan Methodist minister. He was a Nazarene traveling evangelist for a long time and then joined the Methodist Church in the mid-1940s. But as a small child, I can remember making the trip from Westchester County way down near New York City to the Moores Campground.
I was interdenominational.
Interdenominational, but that was a long trip in those old whatever cars, old 1928 Packard or whatever my dad had at the time. But then there are other campgrounds. There's a campground there in West Shazy. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that? You don't have to look it up. You know it all by heart.
They did a video of that.
Yeah, this was where the churches were. The West Shazy Church was the first Wesleyan church, and then they branched out.
Ah,
And
you got them all listed.
yeah, and what was the one up West Plattsburgh way?
Now what are you talking about? These are campgrounds?
No, churches.
Oh, these
Oh,
are the
Nip City.
churches.
They had one at
Oh.
Nip City, up
Yeah.
in Cadeville area, and I couldn't
Oh, I haven't
figure
heard
out.
that
I
name
asked
in a
more
long
people
time.
where Nip City was.
I've heard the sound. They're
Yeah.
very strange
Well,
names that they gave.
Johnny Banker told me.
Yeah, and
John,
then
John Banker. Oh, talk about good. Now they were Wesleyan Methodist, right? The Bankers
Yeah.
were. For those people, once again, who may not be familiar with North Country history, the Bankers had that wonderful, beautiful homestead, which is now part of what is known as Bankers Orchards, right? Right at the corner of Route 3 and is that called the Rand Hill? No, Rand Hill Road, or is that called? I get confused as to names of the roads because they change the roads all the time. But anyway, it's right there. There've been a lot of serious accidents there. But the Banker kids, yeah, the Banker Road. That's what it is.
yeah, that's right.
And
Yeah.
the Banker Road.
Farm.
Yeah, the Banker Road. And his kids, some of the kids were missionaries, as I remember. Some of the kids went to Houghton College.
John Jr. was a missionary.
John was a missionary. Just wonderful people. And as I recall, just as a point of information, John Banker donated the land that is being used now for the Morrisonville ambulance service down by the East Morrisonville, down that direction. They were wonderful people. The Bankers, a great old family name, along with the Bakers up in Cadeville, West Plattsburgh, and that whole region for many, many years. So campgrounds. Now you got churches.
Yeah, West Shazy was the center of the Wesleyan Church at one time, and then they branched out. They had traveling preachers, and these were some of the different places that they tried to start a church. Now, Perrysville, I presume, was Perry's Mills.
You're probably right. Yeah, Calvin would know that.
1850 Either the 1830 map or an 1856 map, it's referred to as Perrysville.
Oh, so that would be Perry's Mills.
And then East Shazy, they had one, and the Ridge. I never can remember all these. And the
The
Witherell
Ridge,
Schoolhouse.
would that be the Ridge Road? The Ridge?
Probably.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then the
Blackman's, Witherell Schoolhouse.
Witherell Schoolhouse, the Hayes School.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
My mother taught there.
Yeah,
Your mother taught at the Hay School?
Yeah.
Now, where was that?
Hayes Woods.
Hazelwood. We call it Hazelwood.
It goes from West Shazy down to,
I think it's still there.
I think the building is still there?
Yeah.
Is the house now?
Yeah.
So many of the old
eventually it comes
ones.
to 346.
Yeah.
And, yeah, down near 346.
And the other one, there was one on Elizabeth Street, which still
Yeah,
exists.
that was the last one when I did this, and Point of Rush.
So campgrounds. Now, there still is a campground in West Shazy, right?
Mhm.
And that's been there for,
Maybe he was. He had a video. He had a video done.
somebody went to the campground. Was that Bob Van?
Bob and Sam did that video.
Bob and Sam did that one? There was the team of Bob and Sam.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Well, we're going to pause for just a moment. We're going to collect our thoughts, and then we're going to take you on a trip down memory lane through this house, because she has a little story connected with everything in here, and you're going to hear as many as we can cram into this tape today on our little corner.
Island.
Wait a minute. Now we're started again. You took us in a bedroom, and we're at the home of Walton and Betty LaPlant at 6 Lincoln Lane in Plattsburgh. And you were telling me a story as we stood out there about how actually your two families got together long before you did.
Oh, yes.
Well, tell me that little story right there.
There was Charles Boyce and was it William Boyce? and came over from England, and they bought some property in Moores. And eventually, I don't know how many years after, my folks ended up buying one of these properties,
Isn't
the
that
Boyce property.
amazing?
Yeah.
You discovered that years later, right?
And
After you
there was
two
a
had been
man
together.
in West Shazy, Ben Bruce, and he filled us in on so many things because he was also related, you know.
All right.
And well, that's that story.
Okay, what do we got here?
This is Walter's grandfather.
Grandfather.
You tell him.
Yeah, Walter, it's your turn. Come on. Tell me, what was your grandfather's name?
Charles
Charles Bruce.
Charles Bruce. You know what I said? It wasn't very nice of me to say when I walked in there and I said, Jesse James. Hey, doesn't he look like, boy, if he had a 6-shooter on each side, he could go conquer.
And she was from Prince Edward Island, and we thought, and they met in Colorado. That's their marriage certificate.
Oh,
He went out to work in the silver mines, and we thought, how did she get out there, a young girl from Prince Edward Island, to Colorado? Well, we found out later she went with her brother. He went out to work there too, came down. And she worked in the boarding house, and he stayed there. That's how they met.
Isn't that amazing? And that's the actual marriage
That's their actual
certificate?
marriage certificate. Then they came back to Saranac, and then they bought a place in Altona.
Now, you got
Turnpike.
pictures in this book of
Yeah,
the...
and this, I think that's their wedding picture.
Oh, my goodness. Kelvin,
They're
it's
all very dark.
extremely dark. I don't know if there's enough light to get it, but this is one ancient photograph. It's so charming. I love it. Just to take a look at it. And you believe that that's their wedding photograph. Isn't that wonderful?
And this was a picture.
Oh, my. That's taken like
That's
Civil War era.
Charles Bruce and his
Okay.
Model T.
Look at, just hold it right up here so Calvin can get a picture of it. Charles Washington Bruce and his Model T. Mercy and Irving and
Yeah, that they're
Mildred and Ethel LaPlant and Florence and Guy and the whole cotton picking
Those are
family.
all Bruces. This is a Bruce side of the
Oh,
family.
that's wonderful. Just absolutely great photographs.
And
I don't, there's, everywhere you go, there's something. Calvin, can you
that's my
sneak in
family
here?
there.
Sneak in here and get a little closer. Maybe I should move out of the way. Kelvin will zoom in on it.
This is the Coakley family, and this is my grandmother, my grandfather Coakley, and this is my father and mother, and this is my father's sister and her husband, and this was my Aunt Gladys. She wasn't married yet then, but she did get married. So this is my family.
I'm so happy that you're preserving all these things for generations and that you know who all the people are. Because people give me so many groups of photographs and photo albums, and nobody has a clue where they were taken
Turn
or
right
who
on the
the
back
people
and what the date is.
are. Right somewhere attached to it. All right, what else in here?
Over here,
All right.
mother and father's
Okay, now that's Walter's mother and father's what?
marriage certificate.
Oh my goodness. 1918, I think, isn't it?
Right.
Oh, isn't that
Yeah.
great?
I
Over
said, you must think I had my hand out all the time wanting these things.
looking for, yeah, but they're such wonderful, wonderful
and then,
tidbits. This
That's
is.
the North Star School, Morris. I don't know if you can see over there or not.
Yes, he can get it. The North Star School.
My mother went there. That's on the corner of the North Star Road and fairly close to the border.
Oh, sure.
Crosses over there. People own it now, and I have turned it into a house.
Oh, that's a house also now too. Huh?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's great stuff.
My mother was born in 1891, so you can almost tell from where is she? She's one of these ones in the front.
Who can tell? Don't ask
Yeah,
me.
right.
Every piece of furniture you have is delightful. What is this beautiful thing?
This is what they call the tie box.
Move over
Put
a
the
little
switch
bit
on
more,
over there.
and we'll get so Calvin can take a look at it. I haven't seen one of those in a long, long time. That's all right. Maybe we can
Lights
just.
are on.
It's fine.
Oh, you got enough? Okay. Just move over to the right, Betty, a little bit so Calvin can get a picture of it. And that is called a tie box, right?
Mm-hmm.
People would just put their ties in there way
And
back
I have
when.
no idea what these are. There's something to go on a dresser. Oh.
Well, they're on a dresser, so
Yeah.
they're okay using them exactly what they're for.
This was my mother's father and mother, and they owned a house right near the custom house in Morris.
Oh,
I believe there's a mobile home on that now.
really? The house is long gone, you
Oh,
mean?
yeah, the house is long gone.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, next.
And then here,
And we're in another bedroom. Look at this picture.
This is a
Isn't that amazing?
picture of my father and his sister. And she died in the cholera epidemic. She was
Oh,
two or 3 years old. And that's their picture.
I'm trying to remember when the cholera epidemic was. Did you have any idea what year it might have been?
My father was born in 1883. And I think she was born a couple of years later. I've got it down in the family
Okay.
history.
So in the 1880s somewhere,
Yeah.
probably,
Yeah.
huh? Late 1880s.
I think her date of death is 1890, if I remember
Oh,
correctly.
no kidding. That's
Yeah.
great. Okay.
And then that's Houghton College.
Oh, yes, I remember it very well. I did spend part of 1 year there. A story we needn't unfold in all its sordid details right now, but great stuff,
This
huh?
is a trunk that we had up in our attic.
Oh, look at this. Wait a minute, I have to get over next to
I don't know
Betty.
what the
Isn't
history is of it.
that was in your attic on the farm?
Belonged to some of the family.
There's
And,
these trunks are becoming very, very collectible. Was it in that kind of shape, or did you have to do something to restore
No,
it?
we did a little to it. And
Look at that.
I think, these are the same, I don't know what you call them, but here, these are the original ones.
They're all original, huh? Oh, that's neat. I got an old steamer trunk down in my cellar that my mother took with her when she went to the Holy Land in the early part of the 20th century. Just a piece of memorabilia, huh? Okay. Okay, this is a collage or a
Yes.
potpourri, if you will. You made this up, Betty.
And these are the LaPlants over on this side, and these are the Bruces on this side.
Well, that's as it should be.
Those are Walter's three sisters.
Oh, my
and,
goodness.
Those are the Bruce boys, right? I can't.
Kenneth
Yeah,
and Robert and David.
yeah. They've all passed away, and Nina's the only one living of his
Now,
sisters.
Aunt Mattie, is that a nurse's
She was a
cap?
nurse in New York City.
My brother's sister, mother's
Father's.
sister's brother.
And she taught at the District 8 school, you said, right?
Yep. Nina,
Nina, yeah.
that's my aunt.
I don't know who this dapper young man is right here. It says Walter
Johnson.
Johnson.
Walter Johnson, yeah, that was a cousin of
That was
Walter.
a cousin, another Walter, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, what great
And
pictures.
he was one I was trying to locate, and I was doing the family history. So, and I knew where he had last lived, and I wrote out. I just addressed it the Bureau of Public Records, this place in California, and lo and behold, they wrote back to me and they said that he had passed away, and if I wanted his death certificate, copy of it, just send so much money, and I did it.
And you did it. Isn't
Yeah.
that neat?
Yeah.
Why don't you wish you owned that vehicle today? Look at this guy, old Uncle Bert. He was kind of a cool-looking guy, wasn't
He
he?
went to Saskatchewan.
Did he really? Ended up
Bought
up
a
there,
farm.
way up in Saskatchewan?
Yeah.
Oh, there's family, absolute wonderful
This was
treasures.
Uncle Guy,
Uncle
and
Guy.
they always said that he was always posing for his picture. And what was his brother? His brother said someday he thinks maybe he's going to be famous.
Oh,
And he's going to have these pictures.
There he is.
there he is.
Yeah.
Galvin, walk over there and get a picture over my shoulder of what we're going to look at over here, because there's a wonderful story connected with this. And I know Betty's going to tell it, I can tell.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
When we cleaned out my aunt's, we had these in our home at Moore's, the tin
The
types.
pictures, yeah. Tin type.
And when we cleaned out my aunt's house down in Moore's after she died, lo and behold, we found the certificate. So my mother took the pictures, and my aunt took the certificate, apparently.
But what kind of a mind would it take for somebody to realize that they went together?
Well, I looked at it, and I knew those pictures looked like they went in something that was oval. When my sister pulled it out of this dresser, there was everything in the dresser that you can imagine. I said, I think I've got the pictures that go with that. So sure enough, that's it.
There they were, and we're talking about 1885?
85.
1885.
They're the
Isn't
ones that
that
lived over near the border.
Are they?
Moore's, yeah, eventually.
Oh, just what an amazing story. I've trapped her in a corner. I could keep her here for another half hour, but we're going to move out of this room and look at some other great stuff in just a moment. A little closer, a closer shot of the farm up there, the old homestead way back when. Just amazing
Still-
that you should preserve those so
Yeah.
tastefully.
It's still, well, this is the way it was given to me, right in the frame and everything, so I
Was it
didn't even have to
really?
write-
So you didn't have to do much
No,
with it?
no.
Put a nail in the wall on that
No.
one. Everything you got has history. These chairs are beautiful old
Yes,
chairs.
these were given to my grandmother in there, the one that was married in 1885. Her father gave her a table and 6 chairs, and I've ended up with 2.
Isn't that amazing?
I will say these are not old.
Yeah, I know, but the chairs are wonderful. But all your furniture is so tasteful. People that can remember, what did we used to call these when we were kids? Sideboards?
Yeah.
Did we call them
This I
sideboards?
bought here in town.
I know, but look, it's
Yeah.
it's absolutely beautiful.
chair here.
Oh, this where Calvin's got his stuff right there is a very special old chair.
Yeah.
And it rocks pretty good all by itself. Tell me about that one.
My mother and grandmother hitched up a horse. They were living in Moore's. I don't think my mother was married at the time. Horse and wagon, and they drove down to West AZ to a Howard home, which is right across from the cemetery. And Ben Howard was my grandmother's first cousin. And he gave her this, and it was always to stay in the family. Of course, I liked it, so that wasn't hard for me to take. And so I thought, well, our daughter isn't married, and I thought, I wonder what will happen to that chair. So my sister's granddaughter, which would be the same family, saw that when we were in the process of moving, and she looked at it at Dumont and Beaverton. What's his first name?
Yeah,
I know the other
Carrie.
Kerry Dumont from
Yeah.
the Brothers Four, or Brothers whatever that was there. I think that's where we had our wedding reception there.
And,
There was a restaurant and now an antique store, right?
yeah, he bought quite a few things from me, of the things I just couldn't bring. That was all there was to it. And he put some prices on the others, and my great niece should be thought, she's, oh, I can't afford that. I said to myself, you're going to have that. That'll be another generation. You're
Oh,
gonna
you
have
got
that
it all
chair."
figured out, don't you,
Yeah.
buddy?
And when we got it, this Ben Howard was a crippled man, and he put a board in about so high, way up here, right in here.
Ah,
So it raised it up. And I was down to his Aunt Mattie's one day, and she had one of these, and I looked and I thought, my, that chair is awful low. So I come home and looked at this one, and I could see he'd put this piece of board in, he'd stained it, so it looked just like the,
isn't
Sure.
that
because
incredible?
it was easier for him to get out of.
We love these pictures on the wall. You told us earlier that you squeezed that one time and
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
by mistake
Oh, I
it
was
broke it, but
disgusted.
they're very tasteful.
And I don't know anything about those other ones. We always had those in our home in Moore's.
You don't need to know everything. Who are the peoples whose pictures are on
That's
this wonderful
Walter's mother.
organ? Oh, Walter's mother here.
Carrying her,
Now, was she feeding the chickens?
yeah, that's the hen
Feeding the
house.
chickens. How did I know that?
That's the hen house behind her.
I was up in Saranac on the Harts Gravel Road last night. I was coming back and Kay says, look out, there's something by the side of the road. And there was a big old rooster standing right there defying me to get close with my car.
That is mother.
Yeah, that's my mother's.
Oh, what a beautiful,
lady.
beautiful woman, huh?
I never had seen that before. That was in my aunt's house, and I never had seen that picture before.
Really?
No.
But how'd you know it was her?
I know it's her, yeah. She didn't change that much in looks over
Oh, isn't that?
the years.
Well, did this stool go along with the organ, or did you get that separately?
No, we got it with the organ, but to me, it doesn't look like it matches exactly, but
Well, who knows? Maybe,
Right.
maybe something. Maybe somebody heavy like me was an organist during the early days.
Yeah.
Kids love to spin them. Oh
when
golly,
you
yes.
spin them up high, get it up high, you sit there and it's kind of rocky.
Oh, I remember. Look at those beautiful brass feet on the bottom of it. And you didn't have to redo that either, did you?
No, I haven't touched it.
Just the way.
I just remember it was the furniture polish, that's all. I did put the new carpet on the pedals there.
Oh boy, oh boy. Now, see, if I was a good organist, I'd just get a tune going. But you said the bellows leaks a little bit in there, huh?
Yeah, and I had a cousin, a third cousin, I guess, that was here one time, and he's a major music, and he said the next time we come back, he said we're going to stay a little longer. They used to come up one day and go to the reunion the next day and go back the next day. He says I'll bring. I know what your organ needs, and he says I'll bring it, fix it for you.
It's
A
beautiful.
few weeks later, his cousin called Walter, and Walter called me at the office, and he says, John's died. And I said, oh, you
Never made it.
must mean his father, because his father was an elderly man. No, it was him.
Young people do that sometime, and it's kind of sad, but, well, as I told her, you ought to call our friend Art Pierce up here. I bet you Art Pierce would look in there and say, yep, I know exactly what it
Yeah,
needs.
you can play it, but you have to pump fast. That's the
Oh, you
only
do?
thing. Yeah.
I
Get your
remember,
exercise.
Calvin and I went back to one of my hometowns at Moira last year and had a good time. And I remember that organ, even though it had been electrified, it had been brought there by ox cart, they told me, from Canton or Potsdam many years before. And in the back of that organ was a hand pump. And you had, on Sunday morning, you had a kid, you took one of the kids, set him back there, and boy, when it was time to play, that kid would pump that thing. And sometimes the kid would take a break and run out back, and the organist would be ready to play the benediction, and there wouldn't be any. There wouldn't be any organ for it.
When we bought it, it had been like that for years. Right here, instead of this music rack, there was a piece of cord around, which you could tell it didn't belong on it. So one day, and another thing, one of these was off.
Oh, really?
But I found that in the inside here where the
Oh,
bolts
come
were.
on.
Yep. So I glued it back on. One day I was looking in the back of the organ and just to see what was back there, I guess, and I saw this piece here on one side, and I thought, that's funny, there's nothing like that on the other side. And I picked it up, and all of a sudden it dawned on me.
What it was?
That's the music, the original music
Yes,
rack.
and it was in the back or on the back?
In the back, yeah, down in the back.
Oh, my, my, my.
So,
So you had it all together.
yeah. The kids used to kind of give this a workout in church. That's probably what happened to it. So,
And you love to save old plates. Boy, we had a beautiful old plate on our fireplace when that great earthquake hit there a short time back, and it took a ride.
the great,
It's in more pieces than I can put together, I guarantee you that.
that came out of the Bruce house up on the turnpike, and that was my mother's there. She used to make these nice cakes with that fluffy white frosting.
Oh yeah, you're getting me started again. I called my wife this morning and called her at 10 o'clock. Excuse me, and I said, my lunch is just about finished. What am I going to do at noon? She says, I packed you a big lunch. You're going to start eating it at 9 o'clock in the morning. That is your problem. Oh, my goodness.
This was, Walter's sister gave me this.
Oh, yeah, I love that. Carnival
Kind
glass.
of a glass. And then I went to an auction. I saw these. The pattern isn't the same, but it's the same kind of glass. And I bought that I saw it at an auction, and but I don't know. I guess we couldn't stay till they sold it or something. And lo and behold, it showed up in Moore's. I think it was at a yard sale.
Come on.
And I said, I know.
Probably
that's
got
the
it
same
cheaper
one.
than you would have at the auction.
Yeah. Right.
That's very clever how
That's
things happen.
A platter that came from my aunt.
Oh,
up in
my, my,
Coventry.
my, my, my.
It's a flow blue.
Flow Blue, that's what it's called.
Yeah. And I treasure all these things that
Oh,
were handed
right.
down from the family.
Beautiful. And none of this stuff fell during the earthquake?
No, the only thing that fell, here's another thing that went with the LaPlant farm.
Oh, that was on the farm?
Albert.
Oh, AJ.
That
Is
was,
that metal? Oh, it's made tin, isn't it?
they did what with it?
No.
Yeah, marked the milk cans with it.
You gotta be kidding. And you just put the red felt on the back to show it up, right?
Yeah.
You
His Aunt
just put that
Ellen-
on the milk can
Those are
and
the big ones.
the big ones, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that makes perfect sense to me. That's a stencil kit, huh? Oh, boy, you got some beautiful ironstone in there, and
Well, that's fairly new.
it looks old.
We did have some ironstone up at home.
Yeah,
and,
I love the old ironstone pitchers, and remember the big white pitcher and the ironstone
Your chair.
bowl, and
Oh, yeah.
that's a
this
nice
is-
chair.
This was a chair that was the farm, that had a seat tacked on it and so on. So we went over to the, did I know it was a Shaker Rock room before we went? Yeah, I think so. Somebody told me that, I guess. And we went over to the Shaker Museum in New Hampshire.
Oh, yeah.
And we were looking around, and we went through this building, and we had to wait for the rest of the crowd to catch up with us. I said to the man, I said, I have a Shaker rocker, but I said, the decal on the back, I said, I had to strip all furniture, so I said, the decal is long gone. He says, if you've got a number on the top slat, He says that indicates it's a shaker rocker.
Really?
And here's a number 4.
So you didn't need the decal. It was
No.
already stamped in
Yeah.
there. Oh, isn't that a beautiful? And it's
And I-
wide enough for my seat.
Yeah, I got
That's
the tape.
best part of it.
And we could buy over there at that museum, you could buy different things, and I sent back and got the tape and did the tape. I said, they'd send you the whole seat, the padding and everything.
Oh, that's pretty nice. And it
So,
looks beautiful.
that was fun to
checkerboard
do.
Effect. I
Mhm,
bet you
that was fun to
really,
do.
really nice. I love this old cabinet
Yeah,
over
my
here.
sister, that was my mother's. My sister took it, and then when she moved into a smaller house, she gave it to me. And I think that's going to go to my other great niece to balance
You
things
got
up.
that all figured out, huh? You got to keep it balanced as
Yeah.
right. You got some little knickknacks.
Yeah,
that
and those
you
are camphor
saved.
glass bases. They're with the gold on.
Oh, yeah. You just love old things like
Yeah,
I do.
I do.
You love to have old things and
Mhm.
to handle them once in a while
Right.
and look at them and,
And,
imagine what life was like way back when.
Those little birds there are salt, individual salt.
Oh, down here.
Yeah.
Yes. Wow.
Yeah.
Those
I will say that when we moved down here, we had things in tote boxes, and when they moved in, I had those things all, well, wrapped, but not real good, And we had them stacked up 3. They looked good and solid. We were getting into bed the first night we were here, and I said to Walter, "What was that noise?" She said, "I don't know." The top one had fell off on the floor, broke some of the
Come
dishes.
Oh.
Didn't break anything valuable, but
Oh, my. Well, we're almost running out of time, but I got a couple of things I want to see before we go this time through. We're getting down to the nitty-gritty. What? That's Heart's Delight Farm.
Heart's
It
Delight
says
Farm.
right on it.
And it's 1930, and that was the year I was born, and all the months are there in it.
Come on.
Right.
Isn't that just wonderful?
We bought it at what was it? Rouse's Point someplace, I think it was. The Winter Carnival, I think.
Oh, it's great. Now if this doesn't bring back memories for anybody that's older than 50 years old listening, I don't know if there was one of these on your farm or not in the kitchen,
No.
Calvin, does it? Now this is, oh my goodness. I can remember my mother getting so mad at me for getting in the flour sifter. This is a flour sifter for people who may not understand it. You put the flour in the top, and when you want to sift it, you see, you can sift it twice if you want to, can't you? Or does that just
That
open
just
it?
brings it down.
That brings it
Yeah.
down from up above.
Yeah.
The sifter works good. This is a side that I can remember my mother never swore, but if she had sworn, she wouldn't have liked that side too much because it would clog up.
Yeah.
You want to tell us
Damp
what that
weather.
is?
That's for sugar, but if you put the sugar in and you have at least a little damp weather,
It clogs
it
up.
clogs up. Yeah.
These are beautiful. These are enameled. This goes all the way back, by the way, and I remember a friend of mine, I think it was Keith Herculow, who bought one, and it wasn't very bad. It was in terrible shape, so he took it apart and just turned it around. The part that was underneath was pretty darn good.
Oh. We
But-
bought this at a auction up in Ellenburg, and that particular day we had to get back. We had to go to a funeral of a little boy and that had died from our church. And
Mhm.
I saw that and I said, "Oh my, I'd like that." But I said, "They'll never get around to sell that before we go." And all of a sudden I looked and they were carrying it around.
Uh-oh, you couldn't leave.
And it was, well, it was in the summertime. I think I worked the rest of the summer getting it stripped. I took it out in the barn.
Well, people had a tendency to put about 5 coats of paint on them to make them look good in their
And,
kitchen.
this is-
Most people are not familiar with the fact that these are like a roll-top desk. You don't have to take it all the way out now, but that's how they worked on the side.
My mother had one and the thing came down like this.
I remember that very well too, yep. But most of these, when you find them, those slats have been broken for
I had to get
years.
some tape and
Tape them together, but
Turn them
you're lucky you got them. Well, now we're going to be almost back where Calvin and I came in earlier today, and I love the things in this room. I love rocking chairs, and this one is very interesting. Now I want you to look at this rocking chair and tell me. No, you don't have to take it off. And tell me as you look at this for our audience. What's different about this chair from a similar chair that you might have in your home? Think about it, look at it for a minute, and say, well, I don't know. Maybe, just maybe, those arms are an add-on feature.
Yeah, my grandfather was quite a big man. I can remember he sat in that and he'd look out outdoors by the hour. And, well, he died, and it was a second marriage. So his granddaughter moved, well, they lived there for a while. His daughter and granddaughter lived in the house for a while. And then they moved to Florida, and one day my sister called me, and she said that my aunt had called and said that Rigsby's were going to stop and pick up some marble tops that belonged to a dresser. And so I said, I'd like to see those things sold. So I called up, or Walter, I was ready to go to work. Walter called Jane Rigsby up. And she said, it's not tonight, but she says it'll be 2 weeks from tonight. So she said, you tell Betty that when we get it out on the floor, we let her know. So we went down, I walked in. I said, that's my grandfather's chair.
Isn't that
Right?
amazing?
Or a step. He was a step-grandfather.
Yeah.
And if you notice, the rockers have been cut off in the
Oh,
back,
sure.
too. Because it was against a built-in cupboard, and I think when he'd rock, it
Oh,
would
really?
scrape on the, yeah.
If you're like we were at our house, my brother and I would rock them so hard we'd break the backs off them.
And then
I know what that is. That's a milk
the
stool.
milking stool.
You don't see too many milking stools like this. It's adjustable, but I dare say it hasn't been adjusted
No.
in a long, long time. It's got 3 legs on it. It's too clean. This is something that was added, right?
Yes, I found that up in our attic, the boards, and they were just about the same size as the other ones. The other ones were all whitewashed, and oh, it was a mess.
Ah, well, that's a beautiful 3-legged stool, huh? Ever been kicked by a cow, Walter? Yeah. You ever swish you in the face?
Yeah.
Listen, I'm not quite as old as Walter, but I milked a lot of cows by hand, and I've been kicked, and I've been swished, and I've been whatever. I was so glad when the old farmer finally got milking machines. I guarantee you that.
And
Well, let me get next to you on this side, and then you go right around and tell me what you got here.
this bracket lamp, the bracket and the wall attachment, we used to, back in Morrison, I was a child, I can remember that, it used to hang right over the sink.
Sure.
And so anyway, when we cleaned out my parents' house, all I could find was the bracket and the thing that went on the wall. And I thought, well, someday I'll find a lamp to go with it. And so Walter's aunt was an antique collector. And so I showed it to her one day, and I said, I'm looking for one of these lamps, I said, at an auction. And we didn't have the reflector either. I don't know where that went to. And I think my mother probably sold a lamp to somebody that wanted it. And she says, you come down. She says, I think I've got one that'll fit that. I went down, and that's what she gave
Just
me.
fit right in there
Fit
perfectly.
perfectly, and she even gave me the reflector.
Reflector. I broke one, I told you by mistake one time in somebody's house, and boy, did I have some fun till I could find a reflector to replace it. Tell me
And I
about,
think
what
I bought
else?
the lamp chimney
How
over
about
there.
that baseball over there? What's that baseball?
You tell him that, Walter.
Walter, let me get over. Wait a minute.
Major. He's got
Plattsburgh Major, semi-professional baseball team that was very active in the area right up through the 1950s. Signed by the whole team or
Yeah.
by...
Yeah.
Now, where'd that come from?
we got it from, I don't know where to get Yeah.
Really? It was just there? Not anybody special that you knew?
No.
Did you ever go to the baseball games?
Yeah, oh yeah, we used to go to the,
To the baseball
Plattsburgh.
games? They played at Bailey Avenue, right?
yeah,
The old ballpark with the old green bleachers that are so familiar, and I was there the day they tore them down.
we used to get really excited there.
Oh, yes.
This was his little lamp.
Isn't that beautiful?
We found the lamp out in our woodshed one place, and we found this part someplace else. But
Phew, you guys are amazing. You find these parts and you get them
chimney
back
we had
together.
to buy.
Oh, my goodness.
And that's Walter's baby plate here. Let's see.
Is it really? Oh, you don't have to get it down. Oh, isn't that beautiful? Walter, looks like you went after it with a ball-peen hammer here.
I don't know.
They'll bite.
Looks like he bit it.
Yeah, but
Is that what they mean when they say you cut your teeth on
Yeah.
it? Isn't that
Walter's
beautiful?
niece, nephew's wife,
Got
they were
the-
having
Who would ever guess that something like that would survive?
Yeah, and Walter's nephew's wife was having we're having something at school in Morrisonville, I guess it is. and she wanted some old things, so she came down and I let her take some of the things we had. I said, what did they think of those things? They know what they were? And she said, well, not really. Most of them they didn't. She says, that baby plate, they thought it was an ashtray.
That was the baby plate. You know, something, as soon as I walked into this room, after the baseball, something else caught my eye. And this is it. And that was yours, right, Walter?
My train.
Now, when would you have gotten that? As a small boy, do you think?
Yeah.
We've got another car, but we don't have enough wheels to go around.
Oh, ha! Well, now that's we got 2 cars and a coal car and an engine, and it winds up on the other side.
Yeah.
And you saved it? Oh, somebody saved it for you as you
Yep.
were growing up.
I know the track was there at the house, but I don't
I'm
know.
coming over with the microphone, Bet.
Yeah, the track was there at the house, but I don't know what happened to it.
Now there
That's
is,
an old jewelry box.
in case, and just in case our audience has not been regaled with enough stories today, there's a humorous little story connected with this train that has to do with a young woman who wasn't quite sure where the coal car was supposed to.
Yeah, in the West Shazy School, they invite the seniors. They invited the senior citizens over once a year, so each one of us was supposed to bring something old. So Walter took his train, and I'd hooked it up with the gold car at the
In the
end.
back.
This little boy stood there and he looked at me, and I could tell he wanted to say something, and he says, he says, that cold car, I think, should go right behind the engine. I said, thanks for
Now that would tend to make it an awful lot. Otherwise, you're going to be running back and forth with a bucket. I guarantee you that. Oh,
old kettles.
Old kettles, aren't they great? Now you saw this somewhere, and you had
That was-
no idea what it was, right at first, or you didn't know. That
No,
it was
we used to have a hired help at the farm, and
Oh,
they left, and Walter went over and he came back and he says, you should see the mess they left in the woodshed.
oh boy.
He says, there's an old tea kettle over there. I don't know if you want it or not. That was it.
The old tea kettle, which is, about a 10-pound tea kettle. But once it got hot, that'd boil water for about a half an hour if
Yeah.
you took it off the
If you could
flame.
lift it with the water in.
If you could lift it with the water in it, and that's a number 6 or a number 9, probably a number 9.
And then this is a,
Oh, look at
this
that.
is a chair we don't know anything about either.
Really? Well,
Not much either
It's-
for you.
absolutely beautiful. Don't be breaking it, bringing it over here. Oh my goodness, Betty.
It was painted green, many coats of green, and it was all the
It was painted
yeah,
green.
the flint,
Look at how it's
I
made.
can't remember what they call this stuff, but anyway. It's not cane, it's
Yeah.
splint, isn't it?
Oh, I don't know. I know
And there
there's
was
a
a man
name
that
for
went to
it.
our church in West Shazy, and he used to do caning and that, and he said, I'll fix that, I'll do it for you. So he did it for me. I was so happy.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That looks like a handmade chair. Somebody made a handmade chair and did a beautiful
Steam
job
used to
at
bend
it.
them.
They probably steamed the wood to bend them. That makes great sense. Just how the way the rockers are put on and how it's pegged is just nice workmanship. It's just a nice looking chair.
And
Well, look at this. This is
this is
special.
mine.
That's when you were a little girl, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now I want to know how all this stuff survived to this day and age.
Yeah, we had a 10-room farmhouse, and when my folks passed away and we sold that house, my sister took what she wanted and I took what I wanted. And
I would have to guess that you maybe don't realize that this is probably isinglass, isn't
I
it?
think so. Mm-hmm.
You've heard the old song with the isinglass curtains, and the old cars had isinglass curtains, and when you had a parlor stove, you had isinglass in it, right? And mica, right?
Right.
You used mica and isinglass.
This was my father's chair, and most of the time he sat in it like this.
That's
And how it survived, I don't know, because he was a good-sized man too.
yeah, well, that's kind of the way that I might sit in a chair.
Yeah,
It's almost got a slot in
Yeah.
it, like you had to put a nickel in it before you sat down. huh?
I put a board underneath to hold it together.
And let's see how they firmed it up a little bit.
And
Oh my, whose cane is that?
this was Walter's father.
Was it really? That was your dad's cane, Walt?
It was on the
Isn't
40th anniversary.
Oh, here it is, 1920. Oh, GLF quality.
Yeah.
Galvin, GLF. How about that, huh? 1880. 1860? 1860, 40th
Yeah.
anniversary.
1960.
Oh, yeah.
Is it 1960? 1920, 1960. There you go. Okay. Not 18, 19, huh?
And GLF stood for Grain League Federation.
Was it Green League? I never knew. But there was GLF all over the place when I was a youngster.
And these were-
Are these the biggest sleigh bells? Listen to this sound. And if I were to sing Santa Claus is coming to town and shake those, you'd know he was probably coming in the door or down the chimney. Those are the biggest, heaviest sleigh bells I've ever seen. Are they family heirlooms too? Or?
Yes, my father bought those for my mother over in Hemingford.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Well, you know, I think we've just about done the tour.
Well, that,
Wait a minute.
One
There's
more
some,
thing.
there's one more thing. There's always one more thing when you're
this was
dealing
in my
with.
grandfather's house, the same place this chair came from.
Oh, okay.
And,
Let's take a look
I
here.
always remembered it
Don't
hanging.
take it down. Just show it right. We can show it
And
right
it
up
says,
there.
he had a son, that would be from his first marriage, that was killed in World War I. He's buried over in France. And
Yes.
It says, when the golden
When the
sun-
golden sun is
setting.
sinking
Yeah,
and your mind from troubles free, while of others you are thinking, will you sometimes think of
Yeah.
me?
and I think he must have sent that to them and they framed it. And I was going to take it apart, and clean up the glass on the inside. Well, I took it apart and it's just like
Just
dust almost.
so you just
So I
left it
just
that
put
way,
it
but
back together.
that's the First World War, and not too long from now it'll be 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And think about that,
I think
if you
that's
will.
the story on it. I don't know.
Well, hey, I buy it.
Because it looks
Everything
like-
I buy everything you've
Yeah,
told me today,
it looks
Betty.
like military. Oh,
Yep. We got wind blowing outside as we speak here. Now, who are these nice folks?
My family.
That's your family.
Yeah.
Who's this guy with the short pants on there? No, that would be Walter. Now you just look at that picture and you
Baby
look
of
at
the
Walter. You can tell me that he looks exactly the same. He's got the knee socks right up. I looked at this picture and I said, well, those aren't knickers. But then we got started talking about knickers the last time I was here and how I used to take the little jackknife out of my high tops in that little pocket and slit the rubber band on the side of the knickers on my way to school, and I got it from my mother because my pant legs would be flapping in the breeze. So that's your family.
Yeah.
There's your dad in the background. Oh, and that homestead is, what home is that, would that be?
Right there, Ritter.
That's the one,
Lovely,
huh?
yeah.
That's the homestead.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just absolutely
we
wonderful.
decided to put on the market, or to sell it. We called in a realtor. First day she came, I said she was, to me, kind of discouraging. She said, I don't think you're ever going to sell this. She says, in one piece. You're going to have to divide it. But you'll make more money. Divide it into lots. Well, I thought, by the time you pay a lawyer, you pay the surveyors, I'm not sure we're going to make more money at it. So lo and behold, there was 3 different people was interested in it. And this last woman, she from the mill down here, she wanted the whole thing.
So you did
She
sell
had
it.
some Irish setters, was it? And she needed a place for them to run. But we had rented out the tillable land, and the man that rented the tillable land still rents the tillable land from her, so.
Isn't that wonderful? What a great story. Now, can you believe all of this started from talk about a one-room schoolhouse? And it turns out to be the District 8 schoolhouse, Beekmantown. And thanks to these people and the Blakes and everybody else, we know quite a bit about that, about both of you, and goodness knows about half the other families here in the North Country because of the way everything is connected. Walter, thanks so much for allowing us to come into your home and sharing a little bit of your life.
Thank you.
It's been an awful lot of fun.
That's an old parlor lamp we had at home.
What? Wait a minute.
The old parlor lamp here, I missed
Oh,
that.
I knew there'd be one more thing that she forgot.
I've had it electrified.
Oh,
But
you
my
did,
mother, they were from Moores, of course, and one night they used to go down to the village to do their trading on Saturday night. And she saw I believe it was Mrs. Fitch going with this. She said, "Where are you going with that lamp?" She said, "I'm going to put it in the store to sell." My mother bought it from right on the spot.
Isn't that amazing?
And it's not. I broke the chimney, or there was a crack in it. It broke again. So.
Now, I wonder. Oh, these are.
That's the
There's,
Bruce.
wait a minute. There's Jesse James again.
Mm-hmm.
There's Jesse James right there in the corner. That's a great family. Now, just before we end, if I had the guts to do it, I would sing a song that has that title of that beautiful old plaque that says "Prayer Changes Things." Do you remember that song? Oh, we got a kitty cat. Do you remember that song, "Prayer Changes Things"?
I can't remember. Do you, Walter?
Isn't it prayer? Prayer changes
Prayer
things
changes
when nothing
things.
else will do. Prayer changes things. Do you remember?
No, I don't remember.
Come on. Well, that's because you're so much younger than me.
Oh, yeah.
We used to sing that song. We end up with the family kitty cat. I saw the kitty cat sitting out there on your deck a few minutes ago.
Adopted
Yeah.
cat.
Most of them turn out to be that way, don't they? Thank you so much, both of you, for letting us come into your life. Thank you so much for preserving this history for us and for the rest of the world to see for many years to come. This is why we like to do this program, just because
I
of
enjoy the
days
program, too.
exactly like today. And who knows where we're going to be next time for our little corner.